Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the human side of AI, why ethics and diversity matters. I'm super excited to be introducing our awesome guest speakers tonight. This morning, depending on which time zone you are. We have Ruben Daniels, who is the founder of Memri AI, Kara Howard, who is the founder of the Kai, and Bridget Greenwood, founder of the 200 Billion Club and the Bigger Pie, and Rebekah Tweed, program director of All Tech is Human. So I'd love to start the conversation by giving you guys an opportunity to introduce yourself and a little bit of the work that you're doing. And I'm really excited to be able to dive into this topic with you. As we all know, we're in a pivoting time, both in technological innovation with artificial intelligence, but also with the numerous challenges that we face as a society. So it's really important that we have the ability to nurture these spaces when these conversations can happen and we can learn from one another. So I'm really thankful for all of you joining me today.
Thanks for having us, Nesma. Hi, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Well, Kara, do you want to go ahead and maybe introduce yourself and a little bit of the wonderful work that you're doing at the Kai?
Sure, thank you. So hi, everyone. I'm Kara, and I have a nonprofit called The Key. Actually, it's hard to pronounce that, but it's the KI. And we're focused on unlocking the key of potential in untapped communities using community education and Web3 technologies. So our core program is called See Her, and this is SI, See Her. So that means in Spanish, saying yes to, and it also connects to visibly seeing her. And this is an education program that we've initiated to support women and non-binary individuals and teams in landing their professional brands and accelerating their voices in the public sphere. So my background is in finance and technology. I worked at a company that utilized AI technologies for marketing purposes. So that's my specific experience with AI. And I'm super fascinated about the topic of human potential and diversity. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kara. I'll give the voice to Ruben. Ruben, tell us a little bit about Memri and about who you are and why these topics are important to you and to your mission as well.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Nesma. So hi, everyone. My name is Ruben Daniels. I'm a founder of Memri. And with Memri, we have the purpose to empower people through data and really think about the oncoming changes with AI as it is introduced in our society on how people can be more of themselves. If we think about the attention problems and the attention issues that we've seen in the past decade or so, if you think about how technology has such a deep effect on our society, perhaps we can dream together and think about what a society looks like that's actually supported and helped, and our humanity is helped through these tools. And so we have set out to build both technology as well as, and now starting with a community, building community, getting really diverse voices heard on how we can shape this future of the internet and the future of society as these AIs and machine learning algorithms are becoming very pervasive and can help us really if we do this right and if we make the right choices. And so that's that's what I hope for, and that's why I love being here for this panel as well. It's so important to really think deeply about the ethics behind AI before we start building these solutions.
Thank you, Ruben. I think it's really important to have conscious leadership, especially when you're a tech founder. And so to approach these types of challenges and really reflect how can we come up with innovative solutions that serve us, I think is the most important, because technology is a double-sided coin, as we all know it. It will only matter its outcome based on the direction that we steer it. Thank you for the work that you do at Memri and your intentionality. I really appreciate it. Bridget, it's really great to have you here as well. And I know you're a champion for women in tech and the importance of diversity and inclusion. And so I want to hear a little bit about the work that you guys do at the Bigger Pie and 200 Billion Club. And I know you have an exciting playbook as well that is coming up.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really going to enjoy the discussion. So I got into we're calling it Web3 now. It was Bitcoin, crypto, blockchain. I'm sure it'll have a few other iterations as we go along. I came into the space in 2017. I really started working full time at a startup, and that's when I understood that this technology can really revolutionize the way that we interact with each other, where value flows, open up a whole bunch of transparency, removes middlemen when they're not required, and it's transformative across every industry. And what we don't want to see, and it's the same with AI, what we don't want to see is it being built by a few for a few. And I'm very, very optimistic about the opportunities we have to shape a new world. But unless we have everyone at the design, development, and deployment table, and even the decommissioning table of legacy systems, everyone there, then it's just not going to happen. So whilst I primarily focus on blockchain and Web3 technologies, of course AI intersects with that. And Kara knows now that although ChatGPT has only been available to me for a few months, I can't live without it. So it's amazing how quickly we can become reliant on technologies, and unless we build those technologies to serve us and to make ourselves better, then we can go down in a dark place. So the Bigger Pie is something I set up in 2018, 2019 to support the incredible women who are in the space. They are amazing, and there's just not enough of us. And to make sure that they get the right connection, support, mentorship, education, signposting of where they need help and what to do next, and also to make sure that we work with event organizers so that these incredible experts are seen and heard. In that journey, we were horrified to discover how little VC funding goes to female-led startups and even mixed teams. If you put the word Black in front of that, then it was 3%. Of VC funding for all women pre-pandemic, and it's half of that post-pandemic, but it's 0.0 something if you put the word Black in front of the founder. So that is outrageous, and it's not because we don't have incredible founders coming along. It's just unfortunately the VC system at the moment has too much bias in it, conscious or otherwise, largely unconscious. So then the 200 Billion Club is to set up to address that, to be able to be a warm introduction and an accelerated program that is tailored specifically to underrepresented founders, to be able to have the technical skills, and make sure that the story that every founder needs to tell a VC is there, but also the additional tricks and tools that you need to do as an underrepresented founder to be able to get a better chance of closing. And then you mentioned the playbook. So
yes, it's very exciting.
Thank you. We don't have a blueprint of what to do. We don't have it right. Diversity and inclusion, I look at things through a gendered lens, but it's so much more than that. And we just don't have it right anywhere. And how are we going to get it right in Web3 when it's a much more fragmented, it's a decentralized, it's much more of a startup ecosystem that doesn't have the HR resources, and you really do rely on your network to be able to, in those early stages, to grow. And if your network doesn't have access to experts from different experiences and backgrounds to be able to build on, we're not building those companies with the right culture to begin with. So the playbook is a collaboration with universities and academia and research with the Web3 ecosystem so that we can build together and work together and then have that path and that access for those who do want to build with true inclusion to be able to do so. So that's the work that I'm doing.
Thank you so much for all of this really important work and processes that you're allowing, not only diversity and inclusion to happen, but really empowering voices that have, like you said, the abilities, the intelligence, and the skills to be able to do that. So this is really important. And one of the things that you spoke about, right, is that I wanted to link with the work that Rebekah is doing at All Tech is Human. Rebekah is the program director of All Tech is Human. And I want you to have the opportunity as well to introduce a little bit of what you do, because so much of the research and development that goes into your work is focused on creating ethical and human technology and allowing the processes and the resources for these leaders to be able to implement that. And we're going to get into how important really this is in just a little bit, but maybe Rebekah, you can introduce yourself and the work that you do at Alltech is Human.
Yeah, thanks, Nesma. Thanks for having me. It's really great to hear what everyone's up to. It's really fascinating and wonderful to hear everybody's projects. So I'm the program director for Alltech is Human, and we are a nonprofit based in Manhattan, but with a global lens and reach. So we're committed to building the responsible tech ecosystem. We are trying to tackle thorny tech and society issues and co-create a tech future that's aligned with the public interest. So we're working on accomplishing this through three key ways. The first is through our multi-stakeholder convenings and community building. So we've hosted, actually last year we hosted 12 in-person events and a ton of virtual summits and mixers and live streams. We host virtual events at least once a month, and we will be hosting monthly in-person gatherings throughout 2023 at BetaWorks in the Meatpacking District of Manhattan. We also have additional events in some key hubs around the globe. So we have events in DC, San Francisco, and we have our first London event next month. So we're really excited about that. We also build community. We have a Slack group of over 5,000 people from over 60 countries. And the second thing that we do to build this ecosystem, we focus on multidisciplinary education. So we convene open working groups that gather a couple hundred people across the globe to collaborate on reports. And these are around responsible tech issues like AI and human rights, HX or the human experience, improving social media, the business case for AI ethics, and our flagship resource is the Responsible Tech Guide. And then just last month, we released a new report on tech and democracy. And then later this year, we're preparing more reports on healthy digital spaces, youth, tech and well-being, and responsible tech in academia. And one thing that we intentionally do is we structure these open working groups in a way that we can share knowledge, but also we're opening up accessible pathways to people who have historically been excluded from these spaces. So we're encouraging networking between different groups of people. And we actually have quite a few success stories of people who have gotten job opportunities just from their connections that they build in these open working groups. And then our third key priority is diversifying the traditional tech pipeline and building the responsible tech talent pipeline. And that's my primary focus, and that's what I spend most of my time on. So we work toward that goal through a variety of initiatives. Our foundation for that is our Responsible Tech Job Board. And this features roles that are focused on reducing the harms of technology, diversifying the tech pipeline, and ensuring that tech is aligned with the public interest. So practically speaking, that ends up including many roles in ethical or responsible AI. A lot of these are with big tech companies, and there are a growing number of other industries that are hiring for these types of roles as well. We also include startups and global consultancies that have responsible tech teams. We also include online safety and trust and safety roles. So those are typically social media companies, including startups. We have a lot of tech policy roles, so data privacy and digital governance and things for people with a law or policy background. And then a lot of civic tech or public interest technology roles and human-centered design. So we have a lot of product roles and user experience design and UX research. So in tandem with that job board, another key priority of ours is our responsible tech talent matchmaking service. So we do connect hiring managers with responsible tech talent from within the Alltech is Human community into these fairly hard to place roles that lend themselves to multidisciplinary backgrounds. And so we've opened up a responsible tech talent pool, and that's full of our community members who are either actively seeking or passively open to new roles. And we have 1,000 people in that talent pool today. So it's really growing. And matching talent with these impact roles is my number one priority. So we also have a few other programs at Alltech is Human. We have a mentorship program, and that's really important for career development because it's such a new field. A lot of people need a lot of help and assistance as they're growing, and having people who've been in the space for a while is really helpful. And we also have a university network. So we bring together students who care about responsible tech issues and are looking for pathways into the field with professionals in academia, like professors, researchers, and people who are leading initiatives around responsible tech topics. So that university network is also really important for providing support for members of underrepresented groups in tech. And we also have career fairs that we're organizing. So we have a lot going on. There are a lot of resources that are specifically focused on responsible tech careers and just trying to diversify that traditional tech pipeline. So my plug is to check out alltechishuman.org and find out how you could get involved if you're interested, either as an employer or talent, or if you're just looking for community. This is a good place for that.
Amazing, Rebekah. Wow, I was actually just about to follow up and ask how could people get engaged, whether it is from an individual standpoint or an organization. But alltechishuman.org really has an abundance of really amazing resources. So I encourage anyone to go check it out. You guys have put in so much work and thoughtfulness into all of the development that you do, and it really shows. So thank you so much, Rebekah. I want to get a little bit deeper and understand what exactly is ethical technology or human technology. How is that being defined? And what are some of the reference or the values that this is anchored into? So maybe that will help us understand what are we moving towards a little bit more.
Yeah,
Rebekah.
I'd love to dive into that. So I've been working in the field of responsible tech, mostly studying these emerging pathways and talent and hiring trends since September of 2020. But I've been interested and concerned about the societal implications of new technologies for a long time before that, specifically ethical AI. So my own introduction to responsible tech was by way of the music industry, and I was a music publicist for about a decade, and I got into music writing. I started writing music tech features, and my interest was specifically peaked when Grimes, in her pre-Elon Musk days, went on a neuroscience podcast and said, live music is going to be obsolete soon because of AI, and predicting, we might be seeing the last generation of human artists. And so I was concerned and thought, okay, is AI coming for musicians? So those implications for the labor force started me down the path of considering tech's impact on society. But then I started recognizing that AI was already impacting society, and there was this whole field of study and practice around ethical AI. So I was studying startups that were coming through these music tech incubators, like Techstars Music and Abbey Road Red in the UK. And I was looking specifically for AI songwriting tools that could potentially replace human musicians. And that's when I first started coming across this different category of potential harm that I had not considered yet. And that was facial recognition technology and how it was raising these possible privacy issues. So I would come across a VIP app that would use facial recognition to let you skip a line to enter the show, or could authorize you to get backstage. And so these applications in the music industry really put that technology on my radar just more broadly. And that increased my awareness of how, these technologies were being used across society already, in airports and baseball stadiums and Madison Square Garden, that same technology was being used. So once I really started digging into that, I realized this had been happening for years and there had not been any significant oversight. So for instance, Taylor Swift, I was shocked to find out way back in 2018 for her Reputation tour, her team hired a security company to set up a kiosk that played her concert and rehearsal footage. And they covertly installed the kiosk with cameras, with facial recognition technology, for the purpose of trying to lure in any of Taylor Swift's hundreds of known stalkers.
Wow.
So you could identify them and apprehend them. But that really, this brought some questions to mind. Is it okay to capture biometric data about thousands of people without their consent or even their knowledge? And is it relevant that it's for the safety of a single person? And how much of our privacy are we willing to trade for safety? And then, most importantly, the pace of technological progress is so quick. Do we as a society even have a chance to have these conversations? And to have a say in the technology that's affecting our daily lives. So it was these privacy issues, which is just one small part of ethical AI, that really sparked my interest in responsible tech more broadly. But then I really started seeing the impacts of tech on society across the board. And I was digging into other issues, starting with surveillance tech and civil rights. But it wasn't long before these issues of bias and fairness, specifically with automated decision-making tools, really had me concerned. And I think a lot of the AI ethics space, at least at the entry level, is about either these surveillance and privacy issues or bias and fairness. But there are other concerns like transparency and explainability. You know, these algorithms are so complex that they're a black box, even to the engineers who build them. And then accountability. So who's to blame if something goes wrong? And this especially comes into play with technologies like autonomous vehicles and other types of autonomous robotics, where the harms can be physical, and other issues as well. But so these aren't the only issues, but they're the ones that seem to take up the most oxygen in the space and help define the parameters of what we mean when we refer to ethical AI. And when I think about why it's important to consider these ethical issues, it's because of the breadth and the depth of these impacts and how significant they are. Because AI plays a role in very important decisions already around loans and housing and hiring, incarceration, education, healthcare. One of my first jobs in responsible tech was as a project manager for a partner at New York law firm Eisenberg and Baum, with their AI fairness and data privacy practice group. So we were exploring these privacy and fairness issues. We were looking at the NYPD's use of surveillance tech tools. And this led me to understand more about the role of automated decision-making tools in the criminal justice system and questions around bail and parole and recidivism, what neighborhoods would be policed the most. But we also looked at the impacts of automated decision-making tools in healthcare. We saw racial bias in determinations around really crucial life or death issues like eligibility for kidney transplants. You know, these types of things all open my eyes to automated decision-making in important application processes around, you know, housing applications, loan applications, and job applications. So New York City is finalizing details around a law that will regulate the use of automated decision-making tools in the hiring process. And that's set to go into effect in April. But these laws are they're so slow. It's just now catching up to, you know, the technologies that we have today, and the pace of technological progress keeps moving. So ethical AI is important because of the significant level of impact that we allow AI to have on real people's lives without significant regulatory oversight. So I think these are some of the major reasons why ethical considerations at that design, development, and deployment stage of building new technologies all along the way is so important.
Wow, thank you so much, Rebekah. That was a really beautiful, explanation of some of the ways that this is being expressed already in our society, and some of the ways that we might be more aware of it and understand like how we might steer it into a different direction. So I'd like to ask, we know what are the pitfalls and what we should be aware of and try to do differently. And we understand the importance of it because of the impact that it truly has, on society and especially on historically discriminalized communities. But how would a different future look like? How would ethical technology support, a different outcome into our society? And so I think that it is as helpful to think about what we should avoid as much as to try to imagine what would be the possibility of something different and something that is rooted in the intentionality that you just spoke about. So I wondered if you have, through your own research and development, some ideas of your own that you could share, so that maybe we can imagine a different future that is not as doomy and controlled as the one that is starting to be painted right now, but a little bit more supportive of our needs as a society.
Right, yeah, and there are many, there's kind of this whole field around AI for good and using AI in ways to impact society in really positive ways. And with the work that I do, mostly what I'm focused on is those harms. So how to mitigate against those harms and how to diversify the tech pipeline so that the people who are building the tools are the people who could be most impacted by those harms. There are a lot of people who are building positive tools with AI, but it is the situation where I'm able to point people toward others in our community who are focused on that. But it's kind of crazy. Like even when I look at, AI was supposed to be a helpful tool to eliminate human bias and invisible prejudice, because the machines are neutral. But it turns out to be a really intractable problem, when data is used to
Yeah,
train
100%.
that is, it bakes in these existing human biases and it gives the results this veneer of neutrality. And, it makes me think of like the perfect case in point there is Amazon when they hire thousands of people a year. And of course, they want to automate that as much as possible, trimming this huge expense. But looking to AI to automate that process of selecting qualified candidates turned out to be very imperfect. It turns out they could not keep the algorithm from discriminating specifically against women.
Yeah.
They're training it on the past 10 years of hiring data, but the AI would detect patterns about what traits a successful candidate was likely to have, and they would lower the scores of people without those traits. But guess what kind of candidates had been successful over the previous decade? So yeah, the candidates would be downgraded if their resumes included the word women or had related terms anywhere on the resume, like women-centered clubs or sports or colleges. So, Amazon tried to fix this problem, but couldn't stop that problem. So executives lost hope for the project and gave up on that. So I would love to have like a lot of examples personally, but in my work, it is just really working to mitigate those harms as much as possible and then point people toward others who are doing work in the space who are really trying to build positive tools.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Rebekah. I want to turn to Karen, Howard, and Bridget. The work that you're doing is such an important bridge, to this challenge that Rebekah has just so eloquently expressed. And we've had an interesting conversation, even you and I, Bridget, yesterday, like ahead of this live, where we spoke about the importance of diverse data in the training of the artificial intelligence, because like you mentioned, Rebekah, artificial intelligence is not neutral. It's actually based on the information that has been fed and that has been trained on. And then it's programmed to repeat what it has learned and known, and to get better at identifying these patterns through the data that it has access to. Unfortunately, if that data is biased and discriminatory, just because our society has historically proven to be this way, then the machine is going to learn that. And so one of the things that I believe is as important is to also teach the machine to look for these biases and discrimination, to look for the lack of representation, the lack of diversity. And so if it doesn't have access to it, it can at least recognize it and have some type of self-regulation. Well, it's even interesting to use that word, right? But of regulation, in itself, to not be completely embedded with what it already has. And then the work that you're doing, Kara, Bridget, which is empowering women, and marginalized community to enter the field and to create the right structures, the right pipeline, not only for them to be funded, supported, and empowered, but also to have the framework in place so they can be successful and thriving in the company's organization and mission. So I just want to hear your thoughts from some of the points that Rebekah just brought up, and see how do you personally meet this challenge, and what are your thoughts about that?
I remember reading The Big Nine. Amy Webb, I don't know if anyone else on the panel has read this. And Rebekah made a very good point about, how do we do this when tech is moving so quickly? There are conversations around the EU's regulations, and the EU regulations could be a bit too stifling for innovation. And then you can look at China, and then you can see that when it comes to regulation, it's whatever the government says is right, let's go ahead and do it, regardless of, and it's very much a different culture with the EU regulations, and then America itself is another organization and structure. So I think it is incredibly hard to, when you're competing against such different geographies, if you're building slower, not getting to market quickly, losing out on profitability, then I think it can be very challenging. So I think part of the important work is making sure that there is what's the profitable angle for businesses to make sure that they are ethically AI. So that could be in terms of the longevity of the user, because the experience of it is actually making them better, as opposed to, as I've been reading, and disturbingly so, that TikTok is creating a generation of teenagers with terrible mental health issues, and so that's fine for now, but what happens to that generation going along? How, going forward, is that really the best profitable business model that we can do? The other areas of interest as well is when AI does make a mistake and brand reputation is broken. So I think we need to be able to, we can understand what our perfect world looks like, but until such time as the money, it's going to be very difficult. And I would like to see more conversations from people with money, talking about how they would like to have this sustainability, this building with humanity and building with profit. I think that would be a very interesting conversation to listen to.
What are some of the challenges that you've encountered in your work, trying to create and pave the way for that diversity and inclusion to be implemented? Do you find that easy? Do you find there is resistance against that, or are we going towards a new era where finally we are realizing its importance?
I think it's difficult to answer, for anyone to answer that, because I know that I've fallen prey to the confirmation bias, right? So I'm based in the UK. When it was coming up to Brexit, even though I voted and I definitely wanted to remain part of the EU, everything in my newsfeed, everyone I spoke to, everyone was Remain. And then I woke up in the morning and that wasn't the outcome that we had. So I'm very aware that you attract the people who are interested in the field that you're interested in. So I live in a bubble where there's a lot of organizations who are working towards making sure that we have better representation of talent, regardless of where you've come from. So the good news is there are lots of organizations. The bad news is we take our biases everywhere with us, whether it's in AI, Web3, at home, media, anywhere. And those biases, particularly the unconscious ones, are incredibly difficult to change. And so in the VC world, and in terms of the pushback that we're seeing, there's research that says, most famously printed in Harvard Business Review, that basically said that women are asked preventive questions. They're asked to defend themselves. It's it's like we don't really believe women. Right? We're not used to seeing a tech founder is a white bro. Come on, and so when women stand up and they present to VCs, then it's like, hang on a minute, what? And you're asked preventive questions. Men, on the other hand, are asked promotive questions. So that's all about the opportunity and the growth. And the study showed that if you ask preventive questions, regardless if it's male or female founder, then 5 times less likely that raise at the end of it. So there's a lot of work to be done. As I said, when the money is coming in and we can see more of these diverse founders being able to be funded to bring their product to market, and their product to market is solving different problems. That might be another issue, is like when founders come up with something that is different to what VCs are used to seeing, when do they recognize that this different is good or this different is bad? And then whether or not this different is bad, or it feels bad because they're just not familiar with it and they should dive in a bit deeper and do some more due diligence, or whether it's just a bad idea. So there's a lot of resistance, I think, in seeing new ideas, although I know that sounds weird if you're a VC, but seeing radically new ideas presented by people who you're not used to investing in. There's still a lot of difficulty and challenges in that aspect.
Thank you so much, Bridget, for sharing this really important insights. I want to turn to Ruben, because Ruben, you're the founder and CEO of Memri, who's an AI startup trying to tackle some important challenges, but from an ethical approach. There's a lot of things that I want to touch upon as well with you that I think would be interesting to our audience and to our panel of guests. But as a leader yourself, I want to hear, how are you trying to do things differently with Memri? What are some of the values that are important to you? And what are some of the things that have just been mentioned, by Rebekah, by Bridget, and by Kara, that really resonated? I want to hear an example of an AI startup and of leadership that is receptive to that. And I believe that, with the work that you've been doing and the positioning that I've seen you take, that this is something that's very much dear to your heart. So I would love to hear about a little bit, having more insights about how Memri is doing this differently, and your own positioning in changing things to create a more diverse and inclusive community and product outcome.
Yeah, thank you, Nesma. So many things connected. If we look at ethics in AI and in technology, our journey really started with realizing that data privacy was an issue. And it took us a while to figure out that actually it's more about the control of your own data, because it's controlling what you see and how you see, how you spend your attention, because that's essentially your life, right? Where you spend your attention, what you take in, the emotions that come out of that, the relationships that you build from that, and your view in the world. And being able to have a say in that and have control over that is so important. It attaches to a value of agency. And moreover, if we look at the social networks that have been around, they've kind of shown a lack of authenticity as well, our ability to truly be ourselves in the online sphere, but really it goes to the real relationships that we have as well. And so authenticity, agency as core values have been part of everything that we do, also the way that we organize. And so we learned a lot over the past years. We studied how others in the world over the past 200 years and more recently as well have organized themselves by giving all stakeholders a voice, and how to do that on a community level, from internally, everyone that's working with us, and figuring out how to be a leader in that context. And for me personally, that has been a real growth journey on figuring out how to be present, provide leadership within certain roles, and allow others to fill in their space themselves. And so we spent a lot of time on that, and we turned out to create a cooperative legal structure, a multi-stakeholder cooperative legal structure, which I think is very close to the things that I heard from Rebekah as well. Getting all those voices involved, and as we're thinking about building out this AI ecosystem, we don't want to be the ones that are essentially specifying, this is how the world should work like. Instead, we're inviting communities that would want to shape that world, to imagine that together, so that we can have a direct relationship between the people and the people that are building. And so that's what we're starting right now to create. And I think this conversation is a great start of really figuring out what's important and where to look, and how to further imagine that. And there's there's something that we say internally that we figured out after a while. It's that all AI is political, and with that we mean that there's always a value system that's learned. And so, what if we come together and we bring a diverse group of people together that usually maybe do not have a voice in technology, and everyone together build the data set, train the AI. We all have shared ownership of the AI, so that we can all benefit, but also really make sure that we are nurturing this with the right data and the right values as we move forward. So those are a few things that we're doing differently. Obviously, with this setup, it also means that getting investment is a little bit more challenging. We try to find a good balance between being a startup and having that early phase, which is high risk, high reward, that makes sense, but also really limiting that to a certain size, so that in the end, this can be a completely community-owned, steward-owned organization. And our ultimate dream is that this can be funded as well by the people that are using it. Because with that, there is a direct relationship between the people that are funding, that are creating, and ultimately also reaping the benefits. And with that alignment, we think that there is a real way to have these values live long over time. Which is certainly our goal. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Nesma.
No, beautiful, Ruben. I think the data privacy and data ownership, aspect that you also speak about is so important. And I believe that Rebekah in her work, has also looked at how that impacts not just like bias and discrimination, but just overall, like how is it not serving the public like interest like right now? It's serving like just a minority of corporations that are becoming multi-billionaires from the data that is being mined from users who are giving it away freely and then are left disempowered and vulnerable from this technology. So I know that like your intention with Memri is really to rethink this relationship and to allow users to feel safe, to have transparency and accountability, and to be supported in reaching their potential, their well-being, in a way that is non-compromising. And I know it's definitely a challenge, and you're going against some grain, so you might find some friction, but I believe your mission is definitely like worthy, and that there's a community and an ecosystem that can be supportive of you, both from the resources that all tech humans are doing, as well as the work that Bridget and Kara are doing. And so I want to open up with Kara and hear a little bit about you, and a little bit about what you've been thinking and hearing from this conversation. I know the key, is doing some incredible work, like connecting women leaders with some relevant, organizations like Memri, and as well really like empowering them to have a say in this journey. So tell us a little bit about it, Kara, and tell us a little bit about how you imagine, the potential of these technologies to be different, because I know you have your own vision for that, and so I'm excited to have you share it.
Thanks, Nesma. Yeah, this has been a lot of powerful shares here from different perspectives, and I can touch a little bit on my journey of introducing AI into my ethical lens. And that really started in 2017 for me. I was working as a growth marketer, as I mentioned, in connection to a marketing automation tool. So this software is something that was had different ways to notify people with messaging and different notifications to tailor specific content to the right person at the right time. So in a way, it's a tool that can optimize humans' experience utilizing technology in terms of saving time and providing relevant content. And I remember reading a piece in Vanity Fair that was an interview with Elon Musk. He had just initiated his nonprofit around the ethics of AI. And there was this visual there that had an image of all the key futurists in the AI space and technology space and their perspective about the future of AI and whether they think it will be, something scary or not. And it really stuck out to me because there was, I believe, something close to 15 images, and there wasn't one woman as listed as a futurist. And so I was new in my exploration in terms of looking at the future implications of the technology that was actually involved in selling and marketing. And I had a pretty big awakening or epiphany, I would say, around that time. And so I initiated a community called the Feminine Intelligence, and this is where we did bring together futurists to share in thought leadership. And through this insights that I mainly, I learned a lot through that process and thinking about how we can better organize at maybe a meta level, which is not easy to do necessarily, but from a product and marketing perspective, which is often how I look at things because of my background, I think it's important that we clearly state as individual companies, as well as potentially start to look at a collective level of technologists, what are our core KPIs? What are our success metrics that we're looking at as marketers? So as a refresh, for most of you probably are aware, in the digital marketing space, we're looking at time spent on a website, number of engagements, number of users, and financial performance related to that. So that feels like there's another level and layer of success metrics that we can look at that doesn't actually hinder financial performance for the company in any way, which is what Bridget touched on as well in terms of how we can get more engagement with ethical AI. It has to be also looked at from a financial performance perspective. So looking at the metrics of engagement and retention are really interesting from both the technology perspective as well as a team and employer perspective, as we're seeing now, the iteration of the workplace environments with COVID and the pandemic and opening us into remote work. The statistics are now showing something like 30% of women are interested in either reducing their hours at work or leaving their jobs. So that's a pretty significant statistic that I think that it's important for companies to look at in terms of why is that happening? Well, I believe going back to values that we're talking about, it's unclear for most of us what our brand values are in terms of the companies we work for and then the technologies that they're building. So as I've been exploring this and been so excited to see what's happening in Web3, and like Bridget mentioned, it's moving very quickly. It's very kind of disjointed at this time. And with the core ethos of this community really being around decentralization, I feel, and collaboration, I feel there may be another, a next phase that we can step into of collectively organizing and structuring our ethics in a number of ways. And I know I heard you say, Ruben, that you feel that you don't want to, as a founder, be dictating what growth for even your own company looks like. You want to tap into the community to also be a part of that process, and I love that. And so I see sort of like this ecosystem where there are experts like Rebekah coming in. Rebekah, you're clearly knowledgeable in the space and you're extremely active in that. And so we have leadership. We do have experts in the field that are giving us guidelines as founders and saying, these are some structures that we would recommend, but please look at tailoring that yourself as an organization. And then coming together probably with some form of blockchain technology where we as founders are able to plug into this ethical AI framework that has tools and templates that we are then able to utilize for individual companies and also vote collectively on. And so that seems like a structure that could come for us as founders and leaders in, say, the technology space. And then on the user side, I mean, clearly there feels like there needs to be a lot more education coming and made available to all the demographics. And so, and from a product side, I could envision something where, we're utilizing even learn to earn models as users are utilizing your software. Number one, they're aware of, to a degree that they may be able to understand it, have the capacity to, how are how are what technologies are you what machine learning models are actually here, and we explain that in a clear way that guides them through the user experience, also asking for their opinions as they go along, and at the same time motivating them with some sort of learn to earn currency model where they're encouraged to participate with actually earning forms of currency. And that could come directly from the company itself, because the company is actually now performing more successfully based on the feedback that it's receiving from its users. And so it's kind of this circular win-win model. And I would be hopeful that a collective of us initiate this for our businesses. And it has a kind of, um, domino effect of sorts, and it just becomes stronger and stronger. And we as technologists, we don't want to miss the boat on what's the best thing to do. So I think we as founders will be very motivated to want to stay abreast of this, especially if it's translating into financial performance and a success metric that maybe doesn't look like, um, you know 5 hours spent on my website, but more like, the conversion into whatever outcome you want to have on your website, which, like, for us as an education program, it wouldn't look like number of hours spent in the website, but in our trainings, but more like, okay, our trainings converted to their professional brands being more successful, and then they were able to receive consulting income from our platform. So I really wouldn't matter to me how long they spent in that process. Ideally, they're actually moving through that quite quickly, motivated to do so. And then our technologies are trained to understand that as the outcome. Um, and most of us are pretty happy when we receive more money. So that's probably tied into employee and, human happiness right there. So that's sort of some ideas I've been ideating, and I'm actually exploring to a as our community see her is about landing individuals professional brands with a website template, giving especially the Web3 community like a space to land their identity. As we're all involved in many different projects, it can be helpful to have one clear space to do so. And then from a ecosystem level, I think this is where I'm ideating, and I would love to chat with whoever's involved here too, on supporting organizations like Rebekah, who are doing so much on the groundwork, coordinating communities, with being able to support you with more technology infrastructure, potentially, if that's helpful for you. And so that's something, yeah, that will be talked about soon. And then from a resource perspective as well, having market research groups that are readily available. So say Bridget's community, there's so many amazing women-led communities in Web3. And for example, Web3 Ladies is a great community in Africa, of blockchain women exploring blockchain. Well, it would be awesome, Ruben, to, and other founders to engage this community with receiving feedback on your technology from the early days, and also driving potentially this learn to earn model with these types of user groups. So
yeah, you're bringing up an important point too, Kara, which touches upon how can we ensure that like the benefits of the AI are distributed equally across population, but that they're also accessible, across population. Because as we talk about like diversity is just not representation of diverse like backgrounds and cultures. It's also like the the fairness and equitable and accessibility that different populations can have access to. So I wonder, Rebekah, if you have any insight that you can share with us, and how can we make sure that artificial intelligence, that these technological innovation are not reserved to a few privileged, ones, which are, nations like communities, but that we're really able to democratize and popularize them so that their positive, benefits are able to benefit all and allow the same opportunities for all.
Yeah, that is really important, making sure that, that there is not this big digital divide and that you have equitable access to these technologies. One thing that we try to do at All Tech is Human is basically open things up to a global community. We have within our Slack community, as I mentioned, we have over 60 countries represented. There tends to be a lot more, the regulations and the explosive tech growth tends to come from specific regions of the globe, but there are so many amazing things happening in other parts of the world, and we really try to highlight that and bring that to the forefront. We were working to build more relationships too with people from other communities. So we have some relationships with some folks in other parts of the globe, but it's something that we're really trying to work toward having more representation. So it's a really important part of All Tech is Human, but it's something that could always be improved. So that is something that we're focusing on. I guess I also just want to say that, like, we need this tech consideration more than ever. We have this big tech AI arms race that's kind of spilling out into the open now, and at the same time, market forces are causing tech companies to be the first to kind of lay off significant portions of their workforce, and cost centers like these voluntary ethical considerations, these ethical AI teams, aren't being spared from these layoffs. So it's even more important that we consider these as we're building these tools. And at the same time this is happening, you have regulations kind of starting to pick up steam and gain traction. Europe is so far ahead of the US in this regard, but then you have local like cities in the US that are kind of picking up the pace, like New York with this their law that will regulate algorithmic decision making and hiring. But I think companies are going to be compelled to devote resources to ensuring that they're complying with these regulations. And there are companies in other industries that aren't currently affected by these layoffs who are adapting these teams. There are, IKEA, H&M, Walmart, Pfizer, JP Morgan Chase. There's so many companies that I think this trend is going to continue. So you're going to see a lot more of these teams evolving in different places. And I would love to see that trend continue in other parts of the globe as well, so that it's not so concentrated in these specific areas that we all know very well.
Thank you, Rebekah. Thank you so much. I think we all understand the importance of collaboration, and collaboration like across, across sectors, geographies, and that we're really coming, into an era after globalization where we understand, and we've been empowered by technology to be more connected, to be able to collaborate, across time zones and across geographies. And so now with that support, I'm really excited to see, what we're able to create with this type of conscious, leadership and intention into our work, how, the collaboration and the work that Kara is doing, or by example, the Web3 ladies in Africa can be integrated, into the participatory model that Ruben is creating for the development of Memri, or maybe help, implement, some connections for All Tech is Human to be able to grow and to benefit and to leverage the resources across a wide range of communities. I want to be mindful of our time. This is such a fascinating topic that I could go on and on for hours. I mean, maybe I just want to touch upon your thoughts on the importance of collaboration across governments for the legal regulations and frameworks around artificial intelligence. That's something that I know Bridget mentioned and when we were conversing and said that like being in the UK or in the US, or you mentioned, Rebekah, that the European Union has further ahead than the US in terms of regulation. So if we have unequal, processes, rules in terms of the development of the same technology, how is that going to pan out? And how can we truly make sure that we will have a sense of safety, of transparency, and all of these important thematics that we've spoken about. So maybe that's the last point that we can explore together before I open up to some of the questions that have been on the chat. And I don't know if anyone has wants to jump in and comment on what is the pitfall of this type of unequal approach when it comes to regulation. Well, Ruben, I will give you a chance if you want to jump in, because I know you think about that quite a lot, with Memri, and that do you believe that governments should be the ones that regulate the technology, and that there should be somewhat of an equal understanding and resolution across the board?
Thank you for that. I was actually very curious about what Bridget was going to say.
Go ahead,
I was
Bridget.
on mute.
Oh, you were on mute.
I was
That's
on.
Go ahead, Bridget.
I think that there could be, different cultures, different countries have different idea of what's ethical. I think it's going to be very difficult for us to be able to have everyone across the globe agreeing on one thing. We can barely do that within our families, let alone expanding out to much larger sections. It would be wonderful to have a minimum, at least a minimum of what is ethical, what can and can't be done. But innovation works too quickly. And I see it in the Web3 world, and I'm sure there will be parallels in the AI world as well, is that particularly the crypto industry really wants to be regulated. It really wants to work with the regulators so that we can keep this level of innovation. We can still continue to build, and the idea behind blockchain technology is that actually you can have transparency, you can have micropayments, you can be involved, on levels that distributed before, leveraging AI technologies to be able to to do all of these things. And the idea is that it's democratizing the world, giving people more access to learning, education, financial tools, etc., etc. But the reality of what is being built, I don't think anyone managed to escape the FTX scandal that happened, which was not using any of the technologies that Web3 is about, but were operating in that environment that wasn't regulated. So regulation is a really difficult, it's a really complex and difficult, in my mind at least, subject matter, because countries, the innovation versus the regulation versus always going to have bad actors. And when you have a bad outcome, then the regulators are going to come down harder on the innovation, because the first cry of it had bad outcomes. So it's a hugely difficult one, and I'm going to pass the baton straight on to Ruben.
Well, Ruben, if you just want to add like a quick sentence, but I think this is definitely like a topic for another live conversation where we can go deeper during the hour about what that entails, because I realize I just opened Pandora's box, and that's we might not be equipped with the time resources left to go really deep into it. So I don't know if you have anything to add, otherwise
maybe
you're
just
good, Ruben.
Just one sentence. What I've seen in our research is that when you get a group of people together to actually make these type of crucial decisions, and there's no incentive systems that are somewhat extractive in nature, you see that people start taking in their communities the environment, the future generations, and so on. So I think that there's a path there, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much for this little food for thought, Ruben. And I want to thank all of you guys for being such wonderful, not only like speakers, but as well human beings that have committed their work, and their time to steering the world in a more positive direction and more equitable, fair, and intentional. So really appreciate all of the work that you're doing, and I invite you guys to stay connected and to keep the cross-pollination, because I really do believe that we're here to share resources and to help empower each other. We're, the same way that our world is an ecosystem, humans are its own ecosystem and natural mycelium. And so I really do believe when one thrives, everybody thrives. So thank you so much for all that you guys do. I will open up a little bit for the comments. If anyone needs to drop off early, I completely understand. And again, it's really been a pleasure hosting this conversation, and I look forward to what's coming up ahead. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much. I do actually have to jump off. I have an in-person meeting to get to, but I really appreciate the conversation and meeting you all. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bridget.
Thank you.
Bridget.
Bye.
Okay, Karen, Howard, you guys are the lucky two that will have a chance with me to check out some of these questions and comments that was left by the users during our conversation. So one user actually commented about like how interesting it was that Microsoft let go of the ethical AI team, by example. And so, maybe like, Ruben, you can touch a little bit upon what that means for you, as a startup tech founder, and with Microsoft on, just releasing Copilot as well and making some huge strides into the AI sphere. What are your thoughts about them releasing the ethical team?
Yeah, so we've seen similar things happen at Google as well, and one can only wonder what happens in such large organizations and how these decisions are made. If we look at Microsoft and their relationship with OpenAI, the investments that they're making and how they're bringing that into all their products, and of course with their acquisition of GitHub and Copilot, having a huge influence on the developers that are building and how they're building code. And of course, there's still many open questions about the data that's being trained on, and really what the right is to take the data to train these AIs. And so there are many questions that I think need better answers than there are today. And so I wonder, who's doing that thinking now at Microsoft, and perhaps wonder why Microsoft wouldn't actually be expanding these type of teams. I don't have a full perspective on them, but this is the first that comes to mind.
Yeah, I think what was interesting is that they still claim to maintain an Office of Responsible AI, which is tasked with creating the rules and principles to govern the company's initiative. However, they laid off over 10,000 employees across the company, and a lot of it was part of the ethical AI team. So I think it's worth keeping an eye and understanding how, especially the big players in that sphere, are maintaining, their commitment to creating responsible technology. Let's see. And then we got Bram, who says, earn to learn. His concern with that is that privacy could become something for the rich or those that can afford it. Kara, what do you have to say about that?
Okay, so basically he thinks that privacy, I see. So he's saying that if we open up these types of models to a public demographic, then that's opening up that data that they have to participate in, and therefore could be something that's, I think what he's saying is like, again, the power structure is back with the creators of the models versus the users of the models. I think that's what he's speaking to there. So that's an interesting point, and that's exactly, I think, what we're talking about here at just a general level with all of the technology, is decentralizing and opening up these processes more. So the way I would envision the learn to earn experience is a bit more about, is an education based. Obviously, the learn part is an educational experience. So on the privacy side, before they were having to connect into anything in terms of their private data, they would be aware of that. And going beyond maybe what the experience that we're having now with like cookies and the pop-ups that we just click on when we enter a site, with no real education that's happening in terms of how a website is collecting our data, that becomes more of a rich experience for the users. Touching on Microsoft and the laying off of the ethical AI team, I think it's really interesting to think about that and the space in terms of like, how are we governing on all the ways that we participate. So with our ecosystems that we're a part of. So for example, our governments, we have leadership and we have representatives and we have some involvement in the voting process. To whatever degree you support that model, it is in some way an engaging of the community. And if you look at that structure and you take that democracy of sorts to the technology systems, okay, so now we have, for Microsoft, for example, for whatever reason, Ruben said we don't have necessarily all the information on why this happened, but we have a team of developers and leadership from a big corporation defining their AI ethics. Now they've let that go, so to whatever degree they have some structure for that, and then us as users, they're missing two layers: the representatives and the voting, the advocates and the voters in the community. So they're just literally starting only with this governing body of people and very little, in my experience, engaging with their tools as well as many other technologies. I don't know how their technology is being developed. I don't know what their metrics of success look like. I don't know really what's happening with my data. And even if they have some terms and conditions, I don't really understand it. So there's just like multiple layers there that I think like, well, we do have a choice. We might not necessarily have a choice of what country we live in. And democracy is at some level, semi-universal across the board globally. Well, we do have somewhat of a choice in some of the technologies we're experiencing. We can make a choice whether to use Microsoft or another service. And we can kind of choose to use Google or not, but it's like having more of a collective understanding from the get-go, from a user perspective, that we're, again, tying back to this learn to earn experience that's opening up the insights, and learning to understanding, wow, 90% of our users don't understand our terms. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, that might be designed by lawyers to actually serve that purpose, to not fully understand that. And so I believe there will be a wave, and I'm hopeful there'll be a wave of larger companies that have a lot of influence being able to take the lead and feeling like, hey, we actually stand for these forms of ethics. And, here's potentially a list of companies that we also support that are following this model, and making that data a little bit more public. And then for those of us that want to participate, as I mentioned, highlighting that information in our user experiences. So that's my perspective. I'm not a privacy expert, so I wouldn't be able to speak maybe like Ruben would be able to like, how to develop the user experience for privacy purposes around a learn to earn model. If you have any insights, Ruben.
And I could talk really at length.
Yeah.
About this topic.
I think just for time purposes, we'll close it off for today. But I really look forward to having you guys again, and to be able to host more of these conversations. And we realize there's so much to talk about. It's such a vast topic, and it's really important to be able to go in length and to explore, the advantage, and the challenges in all of these different thematics. So this is an ongoing conversation and an ongoing collaborative process as well. So thank you guys for joining me for this first session. And I look forward to be able to continue this. And Kara, I would encourage everyone to go to your website. Is the new one live, if I'm not mistaken?
It's on my LinkedIn profile. They can click there. So thanks for that call out, Nesma. Appreciate it.
Yes, it's c-her.live. And Kara Howard is on LinkedIn. So you guys feel free to connect and definitely check out her program and accelerator. It's packed with so much goodness. And Ruben, thank you so much for joining us. Memri is such an incredible startup with such an intentional mission. And I've met very few leaders that lead as authentically as you do. So I highly recommend everyone to go to memri.io and to learn a little bit more about the company, all the wonderful initiatives that they're going to be doing, as well as to sign up for their mailing list to have access to their wonderful product. Right now, the product allows you to be able to connect your data from Twitter and to streamline all of the information in a really nice way that allows you to really focus on what matters, to be able to have clarity on the thematics and the topics that are relevant to you. And it's a step, forward into that process of having technology really serving us instead of inhibiting us. So thank you so much, Ruben, for the work that you're doing. And I invite as well any organizations that feels like resonance with both of your missions to reach out, because I know you guys truly steer a community-driven and community-centric approach. So I wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors, and I look forward to be a part of it.
Thanks, Nesma. Thank you for hosting and bringing us all together. And it's been educational for me. One of the top things that we're doing right now is hiring new machine learning engineers, and just the resources that came up today are so valuable. So this has been great to really mind melt and talk about all these things. So I feel very grateful and satisfied. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ruben. Thank you, Kara. I hope this has been fruitful for you too.
Yes,
and
definitely.
I really appreciate all the work you do.
Thanks. See you guys soon.
Thanks, Kara.
Chat soon, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.